As Shaheen is wont to do, he is playing a lot more Planeswalkers than his opponent once again, with a full 3 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor in the main, as opposed to just 1 on Todd's side.
Shaheen is Esper Stoneblade, not Esper Deathblade.
All right, with that said, we are underway. Todd was on the play. He is playing Esper Deathblade here. Shaheen on the left, just starting off with basics. And a lot of this early game just seems to be about making land drops more than anything else.
It's about making land drops. It's about making sure that nothing too disastrous happens due to Wasteland. You can see Todd with 2 copies in his hand.
Yeah, well, Shaheen's going to be the first one to make a play after playing a pair of basics straight up from his hand. He's going to make Stoneforge Mystic, fetching Batterskull. It's a pretty good turn of events here. Shaheen had just Island and Plains in his hand, and as you see, Todd with a pair of Wastelands. Those are not as effective as he probably would have hoped them to be.
And Shaheen's list is not especially basic land heavy. He has 2 islands, 1 plains, 1 swamp. That's pretty traditional of Lingering Souls builds. And he's fortunate enough to have just randomly drawn 2 of them here against Todd's Wasteland heavy draw.
Yeah, Todd goes ahead and plays Swords to Plowshares on the Stoneforge Mystic, gets it off the table, and he's now going to tap out, it looks like for his own threat, he does have a Liliana of the Veil in his hand to go with some counter magic. We're going to see if he can stick that on the board. A little bit, so this is something that Esper Deathblade, I believe, has here that Shaheen doesn't have access to, which is these copies of Liliana. Todd playing 2 in the main, so opting for Liliana's over Jace's. And one thing in this matchup, in a control mirror, I would think there are situations where Shaheen could just let Todd plus this Liliana. It's not certain that plussing Liliana is better for Todd than it is for Shaheen.
Particularly because Shaheen's list has Lingering Souls, which is something very valuable to discard to a Liliana. Also something that allows Shaheen to threaten an opposing Liliana as well.
All right, land's going to hit the yard for both. Todd finding an outlet for those Wastelands. He put one into play to play the Liliana, but the other one was able to be discarded. And now Shaheen going to look for some action with a Brainstorm.
Now, there's not a lot of ways for Shaheen to get this Liliana off the table straight away. You're basically looking at an Engineer Explosives, a Council's Judgment. I mean, he's light on straightaway answers. So he's going to have to slog his way through this. He does have some good tools. 1 copy of Vendilion Click, 3 copies of Snapcaster Mage, the 3 copies of Lingering Souls. He has an Intuition in his list that can go get these Lingering Souls, but he's going to need to find some of that stuff pretty soon, or Liliana has the possibility of kind of running away with this game.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times in a control mirror, I would say, if you have a kill spell for Liliana, you can let your opponent plus it a few times if you think both players discarding is good for you. But it sounds like what you're saying here is that the Liliana, he has to worry about the Liliana just ultimating him.
Yeah, there's a variety of factors here. It's also randomly suppressive towards the Snapcaster Mage, towards the Batterskull that Shaheen does have in hand. It's a problematic card long term. It isn't game over if it gets to the ultimate, but it's certainly not something that Shaheen wants to have happen.
Well, on his turn, Shaheen's going to go ahead and fetch his 3rd color of mana on a basic, so now sitting on all 3 Esper colors. And he's going to Thoughtseize Todd. Todd's hand's pretty light. He has a 4th land there in Polluted Delta, then a Snapcaster and Spell Pierce. Would have to think that Snapcaster is going away, and indeed it is. And he's leaving Todd with a very light hand, but I'm not sure Shaheen has an answer yet to the Liliana.
And the Spell Pierce, a little bit annoying for Shaheen, as he saw a copy of he has a copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor in his hand, rather.
Yeah, Spell Pierce will be live here. But you still think Shaheen, so if he's digging for an answer to the Liliana, you said, so it's Council's Judgment, Engineered Explosives. Those are 1 of each.
And Vendilion Click is also not bad in this scenario.
Yeah, taking 3 counters off of Liliana means it will take a very long time before Liliana can actually ultimate. Shaheen plays a 4th land, and he did draw an Intuition for the turn. He could attempt to go Intuition for some Lingering Souls. My guess is that would just draw Todd's Spell Pierce.
Yeah, I think he would like to find a better spot than this to snap off this Intuition because it's so valuable in this protracted game. If he has an opportunity to go and get his 3 copies of Lingering Souls, Todd may not be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, the Liliana's plus up to 6. Jace and Savannah both hit the yard for Shaheen, for the players, which does mean Shaheen now knows that Todd is on a Deathblade variant.
Usually the presence of Liliana is an indicator there. It's a very powerful turn 2 play once you have Deathrite Shaman in your deck, but the Savannah is the dead giveaway. Now there can be no doubt.
We'll see the line he picks. Looking at Shaheen's hand, he has a 5th land, he has an Intuition, he has a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And I believe the last card is a Snapcaster Mage. He has a lot of tools. None of them look like they're going to be able to deal with this Liliana on 6 in time.
It's a little bit awkward. If Shaheen had a 5th land, then he could do all sorts of stuff. You know, he could Snapcaster for his Thoughtseize and pay. he could cast the Intuition and pay for Spell Pierce.
Apologies there. This Liliana, that was last turn's Liliana Plus. This one got the Spell Pierce from Todd and the Vendilion Click from Shaheen. And Shaheen tries to go ahead and make a Snapcaster Mage there to ambush the Liliana, but it meets the last card in Todd's hand, which is Swords to Plowshares. And what a draw there for Shaheen. He drew a Lingering Souls as opposed to having to Intuition for them. So it looks like Shaheen's going to lose. If Todd wants him to, Shaheen's going to lose half his lands, but he does have these Lingering Souls that he drew. Even on a board where Shaheen's down to 2 mana, I would think he may be okay with that.
For sure. I mean, this is quite a bit of pressure. Todd has no way to break up Shaheen's graveyard right now.
With Todd's hand empty, Shaheen's going to take the opportunity to make his own Planeswalker. His is Jace the Mind Sculptor. It draws the Engineered Explosives. It draws a 6th land. Looks like he's going to go ahead and put that Intuition back away. And the Lingering Souls away. So those are both on top of the deck. Instead opting to play a Jace plan here, but he is keeping the land in his hand there as a shield in case Todd decides to plus Liliana again.
The rest of the cards in Shaheen's hand are much more valuable at this point. Shaheen can totally function on the resources he currently has.
Yeah, well, he does have a second Jace in his hand.
Another easy discard in this spot.
Right. If I'm on Todd's, he might have to anticipate that Todd's going to split the piles as lands versus Jace. He might sneak one land in with the Jace, which you see he does here. He sneaks the plains in with the Jace. And with another land and another Jace in his hand, Shaheen will probably just bin that plains and the Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Seems pretty easy in this spot.
Oh, he's going to go the other way. All right, takes 3 lands into the yard, leaving himself with just plains and Jace.
Yeah, I guess he still feels like he can get to a 3rd land. There is some risk here.
Yeah, he does have that Brainstorm off Jace, which he's doing now, and we do know he had a fetch land in hand and one on top of his deck, so he's going to have a lot of card manipulation here. It does set him back, but then again, he has Jace and replacement Jace right now.
He has a lot of resources no matter how he wants to split this up.
Yep, going to put the extra Jace back on top, crack a fetch land, and we'll see if he can put more pressure. I think he'd ideally be hoping to draw to something like a Stoneforge Mystic, but really just ensuring his land drops is probably good enough.
Although, keep in mind, Shaheen is now out of basics, so Todd's Wastelands are back on.
All right, Shaheen drew to an Inquisition of Kozilek, gets to look at Todd's hand. It's a Tundra. And we are in top deck wars, but Shaheen has a Jace. You have to put him pretty far ahead thanks to that.
But there's still some risk here of him randomly not being able to find a land for a little bit of time here. If Todd's able to find something like True Name Nemesis, especially, maybe even Stoneforge Mystic, that can give him a lot of power here. But Shaheen's going to be looking at a lot of cards, and Todd needs to find something soon, something proactive, or else Jace is just going to run away with this game.
Yeah. Todd could find his own Jace, perhaps. There are live draws, but he needs one in the next, I would say, 2 turns. Shaheen's draw for the turn there was a Supreme Verdict. That'll be put back. He did find a second land, but it's not a fetch land, so he's not out of the woods yet. You see but Shaheen has now assembled Force of Will plus blue card.
And that's a ton of insurance. I'm sure Shaheen would like to continue to make his land drops, but even if he doesn't, he does have some protection.
Yeah, so now Todd has to top deck 2 running threats. Or actually, this will work. He drew a Thoughtseize for the turn. And that's actually not too bad, as it is in its own way a threat, because if he casts it, he's going to get the Force of Will with it one way or another. So maybe if he draws another business spell next turn, he can push it through.
Yeah, and I like Todd sitting here in this spot where there's not really anything going on. He's not trying to push through anything. I think it's a mistake to just fire off that Thoughtseize. Wait until you have something that you're actually trying to back up, have a little more information about what you want to take.
Shaheen narrowly finds land number 3. And with now what appears to be 4 activations of Jace, things are getting pretty grim for Todd. So he's going to lead up on Thoughtseize, and in response, Shaheen's going to go ahead and Intuition. And this play in the deck, the reason you play one of Intuition is there's a lot of synergy with the Intuition into 3 Lingering Souls. I'm not, what else does it find anything else typically?
So he does have 3 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, so it's a way to go get that on a stable board. And that is pretty much it in terms of synergies. I mean, he can Intuition for a variety of spells and use that alongside Snapcaster Mage to do certain things, but it's basically go get Lingering Souls or go tutor for Jace.
Yeah, and he's going to go... Shaheen does get the Lingering Souls here. So now 2 in the yard, 1 in the hand. Todd's Thoughtseize will resolve. And here's kind of the rough spot, right? If you're Todd, I think you have to take Force of Will. You have to hope that you're going to draw into something really... that when you hit that live draw, you're going to need it to resolve.
He can't really take anything else because it's just other reactive stuff that's more narrow than the Force of Will. Alluring Souls that doesn't really help to take.
He can be, okay, Todd actually making a good observation here. Because there's no other blue cards in Shaheen's hand, Todd can take Brainstorm instead.
So what this allows Todd to do is if he's able to find a big threat card this turn, Stoneforge Mystic, or especially True Name Nemesis, he can get back into the game.
Todd looks at the top cards of his deck. It is Spell Pierce and 2 lands. You know, he's debating keeping this. It's not a threat like you were talking about. Yeah, and he's going to have to shuffle it away.
I think the game is slipping away from Todd here, and one-for-one reactive stuff is not going to get the job done anymore. I think he needs to find something proactive this turn. True Name Nemesis especially. I think even something like Liliana the Veil would at least allow him to stay in the game, but he can't just draw a Spell Pierce and say go. That's not going to cut it from here.
Yeah, well, right, he's drawing 1 card a turn, and his opponent is brainstorming with Jace every turn. You know, that one-for-one game isn't going to go his direction. His draw for the turn was a fetch land, so he cleared the way past Force of Will for 1 turn at least, but it does not look like he's going to get, well, he's going to get another turn. Now Shaheen can keep the Supreme Verdict with the Force of Will after he brainstorms with Jace. And I think he had a narrow window, and it seems to me like the window now closed.
I agree. Shaheen doesn't even have black mana, but his hand at this point is so loaded that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, well, he has Force plus blue card again, in addition to the Stoneforge Mystic and a Jace on the table. And Shaheen's going to run out both Stoneforges, getting both his equipment again. Draw for the turn for Todd is Deathrite Shaman, but he knows the story, and that'll go game 1 in Soorani's favor.
The clock is an issue in this matchup. It can go very long, especially when both players have Stoneforge Mystic in the deck. So it makes a lot of sense just to pack it up there. Don't waste too much time on the clock.
All right, so if I wanted to talk a little bit about how their deck lists were different in that matchup, both players have 3 Planeswalkers in the main. As I said before, Shaheen has 3 Jaces, whereas Todd has 2 Lilianas and a Jace. And to sum up that game for me, it seemed like it was a Liliana versus Jace battle. And Jace really seemed to win the fight.
Shaheen doesn't need to have a lot of permanence in play to be functional, especially once Jace gets into play. Going ultimate can be bad, and Shaheen doesn't want his hand taxed, but Todd's hand's also valuable for him. I mean, it's a control mirror match. So the plussing of Liliana, though obnoxious for Shaheen, is not clear that it's that much worse for him than it is for Todd, if it's even worse at all. And Shaheen having 3 Jaces to Todd's 1 copy is a huge edge. I think if Todd has access to Deathrite Shaman early on in the game, that can change the way the game plays out considerably, just with the amount of pressure that he has and how quickly things start happening for him. But that Liliana was pretty anemic, relatively speaking, because it wasn't supplemented by any sort of pressure and came out pretty late in the game.
So is a card, if you're on Todd's side, is a card like Liliana even good in this matchup? You know, until you hit that ultimate, Liliana's actually card disadvantage for Todd, because he had to cast the Liliana, and they're both discarding, and it's about the same for both of them.
I still think it's worth keeping in, and Shaheen, if you know him as a deck builder, his decks are almost, in control mirror matches, they're almost always better at going long than someone else. He plays the grindiest builds available. Maybe the fact that he has Lingering Souls means that Todd's supposed to get away from it, though.
Right.
Liliana matches up so poorly against Lingering Souls that might be enough.
If you play Liliana plus it and your opponent discards a Lingering Souls, you feel like you just 2-for-1'd yourself.
Yeah. So
right.
we'll see. Liliana is this card where in fair games of Magic, it's really hard to get away from because it's so flexible and so powerful. But Shaheen's list is pretty durable against that card, all things considered.
All right, so I'm going to run you through some cards in Todd's sideboard, and we can go yes or no on this. I have to assume, first of all, the cards I think are auto yeses would be, he's got another Thoughtseize, that probably comes in. He's got an extra Jace the Mind Sculptor, have to think he's into that one. All right, other things. He could be playing Zealous Persecution. It's a way to answer Lingering Souls, but it's kind of narrow in the matchup.
I think that's too narrow.
All right, Pithing Needle can answer Jace if he's behind.
Yeah, Todd has his own Jaces too. I don't think that Needle gets it done.
All right, Sword of Feast and Famine. I know GT is not particularly good in this matchup.
I think it's fine. It's a better anti-control equipment than the Jitte is, as you mentioned.
All
Though,
right.
Todd does have, because Shaheen has Lingering Souls in his list, it's possible Todd will just keep in all of his equipment, keep in the Batterskull and the Jitte, and also bringing in the Sword of Feast and Famine as well. These games can go on for a really long time, and it's nice to have additional equipment to search for with Stoneforge Mystic, so he may just go up to a 3rd equipment.
Yeah, all right, 2 more of them. Abrupt Decay, it's pretty narrow, but it can kill a Stoneforge Mystic.
Seems seems too narrow.
All right, and the last one is, this is an interesting one. He has 3 Meddling Mage in his sideboard that's typically used for combo, but because Todd's deck is pretty soft to Lingering Souls, there might be an argument to have to board in the Mage to get those Lingering Souls.
Especially if he's bringing in a third equipment, which I believe is possible. So I do think that I like Meddling Mage in the matchup. Shaheen has Lingering Souls, as you alluded to before, and if Todd may feel like he needs to be the aggressor in the matchup because of Lingering Souls. Shaheen's long game might just be much better than Todd's. Todd also has only 1 Jace in the list. He can reasonably assume Shaheen has more than 1 Jace if you know anything about him as a deck builder. So
I would generally just assume that Shaheen's on 5+ Planeswalkers in any format.
For sure. So I think Meddling Mages makes a lot of sense. If I was in Todd's seat, I would want to take a much more aggressive approach to the matchup.
Now, on Shaheen's side of the board, he does know that Todd has Graveyard Hate. He may suspect that Todd's playing True Name Nemesis, and indeed Todd does have 3 of them. So then you have to think, what cards does he have that actually combat True Name?
He does have 2 copies of Engineered Plague in his sideboard that he can bring in if he's worried about that. He has 2 copies of Notion Thief, which is reasonable just in any sort of brainstorm Jace mirror match. 2 copies of Cabal Therapy. That's another really powerful thing to go do with Intuition. Go get Lingering Souls plus 2 copies of Cabal Therapy. So I think that's going to come in as well. He may want the additional Spell Pierces as well. They help a lot fighting over Planeswalkers.
Interesting, okay. So, can Shaheen ignore True Name Nemesis? Can he fight over the equipment and ignore it? He is playing Lingering Souls.
It is. There are spots where he can beat it, and especially if he keeps in some copies of Supreme Verdict, he has to care a lot less about it. But it is more problematic than it is for most builds. Shaheen does not have Liliana of the Veil in his list, so he's a little light on True Name Nemesis answers.
All right, well, game 2 is underway. Todd started off with a land. Shaheen Inquisition of Kozilek him, played Inquisition of Kozilek on him. We did get to see Todd kept a 5-land hand with True Name Nemesis and Sword of Feast and Famine, which seems reasonable in this matchup. 5 lands are good, Sword is good. the Stoneforge Mystic off the top on turn 2 is quite good.
Not a shabby draw there. I was about to say, I can't believe Todd's not just going to wasteland Shaheen here, but if your draw step was Stoneforge Mystic, makes quite a bit of sense.
Yeah, so Todd's hand has a lot of good pro action in it. The danger would be is that he basically has green-lighted Shaheen on casting something like Jace.
Though, with Todd having access to Wasteland, he has to care much less about that as well, at least in the short term.
Yeah, and all right, back on Shaheen's side, he's going to go ahead and Swords the Stoneforge Mystic off the table. We saw that play happen last game going the other way, basically something that buys time. And now we may get a look at Shaheen's hand. Todd is going to Thoughtseize him. Shaheen's hand has a lot more business in it. It has 2 Stoneforge Mystics, a Snapcaster Mage, an Engineered Explosives, and a Jite. But the big news is it has no 3rd land, as we know there's a Wasteland waiting in the wings for Todd.
And this is so powerful, not only getting to take whatever Todd believes the best card is in Shaheen's hand, but informing his Wasteland so much. For example, he can, take the Snapcaster Mage, Wasteland the Tundra, and then Shaheen basically has a 1-turn window to draw white mana to be able to get the Stoneforge Mystic into play.
And it's exactly what he's going to do. Takes the Snapcaster, wastes the Tundra. So now Shaheen with Equipment, Engineered Explosives, and 2 Stoneforges does not hit the land drop and has to pass back. And now Todd takes the other land. Shaheen down to 0 lands, just passing Todd into 3. Plays Sword of Feast and Famine. Looks like game 2 may go his way if Shaheen can't draw out of it. Of note is that Todd has drawn Zealous Persecution. He believes it to be good in this matchup.
And there's enough, trading that can occur in some spots. It can help in Batterskull Wars and protracted games sometimes, but it is more than anything else an answer to Lingering Souls, which is a very problematic card for Todd's deck.
My question would be, if you're on the Shaheen side and Shaheen casts 1 Lingering Souls, is 2 Spirits enough to create the pressure you need, or do you always have to flash it back to really get the, to make it a relevant card? Like, the way to play around Zealous Persecution would be to only play the Lingering Souls 1 half at a time.
It just depends on how much Shaheen's got going on in the game besides the Lingering Souls.
All right, now Todd, right now Shaheen's just on basic planes, which means if Todd hits a 5th land, he can go ahead and just cast Batterskull. And we can see all the things that Shaheen's drawn in the meantime. He has drawn, since we last checked, he has drawn a Lingering Souls, a Spell Pierce, and an Inquisition of Kozilek. So a full 7 cards.
Though Todd's hand right now is not great. I mean, it's Zealous Persecution, Batterskull, and a Council's Judgment. If Todd finds a 5th land, he can just deploy Batterskull, probably go from there. But it's not inconceivable if he misses his draw steps for a while and Shaheen rips a bunch of lands in a row that
Shaheen could win this.
He could claw back in.
I think with this hand, it looks like Shaheen could win this off of, almost off of 2 mana. Probably would need a 3rd, but a 3 would be fine.
If Shaheen only had one copy of Stoneforge Mystic, I think this game would be really easy for Todd. He could just Thoughtseize that away and go from there. But the second copy makes it problematic. It means if Shaheen does draw a second land, he's very live.
He takes the Engineer Explosives. To me, what that is he's trying to take Shaheen's answers to Germ tokens, perhaps?
Germ tokens and the sword.
Right. Shaheen's going to go ahead and play Stoneforge Mystic. I believe he'll getting his own copy of Batterskull. Did Todd hit land 5? That's the question here. It looks like the answer is no. And he somewhat needed to that turn. If he had that turn to tap out for Batterskull, he'd be fine. There are some issues, though. We know that Shaheen has Spell Pierce in his hand. We don't know. And Todd can't be sure if Shaheen's going to tap out again. He didn't have another spell worth tapping out for at 2.
It's unlikely that he would tap out that turn, as he can just simply pass with Stoneforge Mystic.
Right. And I think Todd's going to try to induce Shaheen to tap out at least one more time. Yeah, he counsels Judgments the Stoneforge and plays a pseudo land there in Deathrite Shaman. But Shaheen draws land 3, which means Shaheen could make another Mystic and hold up Spell Pierce this turn.
Though now Todd is threatening to equip the sword onto the Deathrite Shaman, which is all sorts of trouble. I mean, Jace plussing, maybe Shaheen cares about that, maybe he doesn't, but an unchecked sword, he absolutely does.
Yeah, and I'm not positive Shaheen has the answer to it. Well, we'll see what he chooses to do. He's going to go ahead and fetch, and it may be that he's just going to make Lingering Souls. Goes and gets Underground Sea. So a game that looked like it was all but over in Todd's favor now has become quite the battle again. Todd's still ahead thanks to a lot of early game tempo created from those 2 Wastelands. As far as cards go, he's definitely not ahead. And the Inquisition of Kozilek's away Todd's Zealous Persecution plays Stoneforge, but now he gets to see the bad news is that waiting in the wings is a Batterskull. And now Todd has a choice, right? Does he want to equip and swing, or does he want to get that Batterskull into play?
I think this is better. I like just getting proactive here, getting this online. Start to attack Shaheen's hand while he's just starting to pull out of this initial land screw.
So Todd does connect. Shaheen discards Lingering Souls. Todd will cast that Thoughtseize post-combat. He sees Jite, Batterskull, and Spell Pierce. So 2 pieces of equipment means that Shaheen's going to get to put one into play if he wants to.
Interesting to see what he takes here. The Batterskull is the more powerful card objectively, but the Germ is black.
Right.
So the sword does check it.
Yep, and I think with that, he's going to go ahead and take Jite. There'd be the worry that if Shaheen got Jite counters, then this sort of Feast and Famine just wouldn't matter anymore.
Correct.
But Shaheen with a pretty good draw of his own, he drew Council's Judgment for the turn. That seems really strong right now. He can take either the sword or the Deathrite off the table.
I think he needs to do this in lieu of putting an equipment into play. I don't think he can take another hit. This is also fine too. I mean, this gives him the opportunity to chump block.
Yeah, he's going to make 2 1/1s with that Lingering Souls. And swing with Stoneforge. So he makes 1/1s. He chose to make 1/1s as opposed to making a Batterskull. And that makes sense because he wants to block.
Yeah, this is 2 chump blocks.
Yeah. Do you not want to get rid of the sword? That would be.
Well, he can chump block this turn, untap, play Batterskull, chump block the subsequent turn, and then untap and Council's Judgment.
All right. Todd drew Swords to Plowshares for the turn there, so he goes ahead and swings, gets Shaheen to chump with one of the spirits, swords away the Stoneforge. And now, on a board that's starting to look stable here, Shaheen's going to Council's Judgment away the Deathrite Shaman.
And he has Spell Pierce in hand to check the Batterskull, even if Todd rips land number 5. I mean, he's right back in this.
Yeah, and as you said, Todd does have land 5, but Todd knows about the Spell Pierce.
Yeah. This has been really impressive stuff from Shaheen. I mean, this was looking horrible for him, and he has clawed his way right back into this game.
Yeah, a Ponder from Shaheen will shuffle the top 3 for him. Yeah, Todd did draw land 5. It looks like he's going to hang on to it in case he draws a Brainstorm.
Also, no reason to let the cat out of the bag. Even if he draws land number 6, he's not going to still cast his Batterskull into the face of the Spell Pierce.
Yeah, it seems almost more likely that he either would need 7 lands, or he just needs to draw a Stoneforge if he wants that Batterskull to be in play. And Shaheen draws it looks like a second copy of Spell Pierce here. And hits for 1. Todd is down to 9.
And these Thoughtseize hits are really starting to add up as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised to see Todd at 9. I was thinking, where'd all this damage come from? And it looks like Todd's going to Thoughtseize away a Batter Skull, leave Shaheen with 2 Spell Pierces. Todd just needs to draw now a creature. Shaheen will Thoughtseize him back, so now no Batter Skull in Todd's hand. Todd's down to 7.
And it needs to be a creature pretty soon here because Shaheen may just be able to win this race on the back of just this 1 Spirit token.
Yeah, Spell Pierce now in Todd's hand, so both players just kind of with Spell Pierces in hand. And we keep seeing draws and players just trading back and forth. Cabal Therapy from Soorani. Gets to see Todd's hand, is opposite not to flash it back. But here's a pretty big one. It's True Name Nemesis from Todd.
That's the draw. I mean, that's the ideal sword target at this stage of the game. It's something that is fast enough as the board is currently presented to race. But if Shaheen picks up anything else, it's just back.
It's fast by 1, right? So right now Todd goes to 3 off that hit. And so it's a 3-turn clock on both sides, but Todd gets to swing first. This is a race in Todd's favor, but a lot of things could go wrong.
Shaheen's out of equipment, but he can draw another copy of Lingering Souls, his own creature.
I think if he needed, that would have had to have been that turn though, and he drew a land. So this may be in Shaheen's favor.
He's found Intuition, and I think that he can Intuition and go get Lingering Souls.
Right.
Flash 1 back and Spell Pierce. No, he does not have enough mana to Spell Pierce to pay for a Pierce.
So he's gonna go ahead and cast Intuition here. He knows about a Spell Pierce, and he knows that he'll have to tap 2 more. I imagine Todd will make him.
I think he's a mana short here.
Yeah, just gonna go ahead and pay for it. I mean, in that situation, he would want to get 2 copies of Lingering Souls and flash back 1/2 of it.
Yeah.
But he is a mana short. He could get some swords possibly for his own creatures to gain.
Well, he is out of equipment. We know that from an earlier Stoneforge Mystic. He could do something like get Disenchant. He can go get Disenchant, Snapcaster, assuming that he brought in the Disenchant.
Yeah.
That gets him away for sure to get the sword off the table. He has a card left over that he can use to discard to the sword next turn. He goes to 5 from the hit, untaps. If he's able to get the sword off the table, Todd can only knock him down to 2.
And then he has the lethal swing.
Then the Spirit gets him.
And it looks like he has found that. And he has boarded in the Disenchant. It's exactly as you mentioned here. Snapcaster, Disenchant.
Yeah, I mean, he can hypothetically survive this hit. There's all sorts of draws that Todd can have here that ruin this. Even Liliana showing up and minusing to get the token off the table breaks all this up. But if Todd misses on his 2 draw steps, this does allow Shaheen to win the game.
All right. So has the answer to the sword in play, or in his hand. If Todd swings, Shaheen goes down to 5. But yeah, he's gonna need to find a way to deal 2 more, or really to interact with the Disenchant that's about to be cast here. And a huge draw for Todd is Snapcaster Mage for the turn. And what does that, is that lethal? Does he have a kill spell in his yard?
He has a Zealous Persecution, which is
huge.
excellent here.
Yeah, he has Zealous Persecution, he has swords. That draw certainly will do. The question would be is if you just main phase do it right now while Shaheen's tapped out. And I think you would. You don't want Shaheen drawing something that breaks this up.
Yeah, Todd's going to do a check here, but what this amounts to, you can be pretty sure that what's going to happen here is Shaheen's going to discard whatever the other card in his hand is. We know he has to keep the Disenchant. You knock him to 4 from the hit, and then Shaheen is facing 2 lethal attackers.
Right, with just a Disenchant in hand, that should be good enough. He's going to go ahead and put Shaheen to 5.
The issue with that play and play, and why I think this is better, is that Todd, if Todd does the play where he just does it right now, if Shaheen untaps, disenchants the sword, and casts Lingering Souls, Todd then loses the game. So by keeping the Zealous Persecution back in his hand, he has insurance in case Shaheen does draw another copy of Lingering Souls.
All right, so Shaheen untaps, swings, he disenchants the sword, but Todd has Snapcaster Mage, and we're on to game 3.
Very well navigated there by Todd. The initial instinct there to get aggressive, I think, you know, you mentioned it,
Yeah.
I thought of it too, but it does leave Todd susceptible to Shaheen drawing a Lingering Souls that turn.
Yeah, it depends whether you're playing around Lingering Souls or playing around a Counterspell, and we know Sheen's playing Souls. We don't know if he's playing straight Counterspell if you're on Todd's side. So play around the card you know about.
Right. You don't even care if Shaheen's draw step is Counterspell, then he's still pretty much done for.
Well, he would Counterspell, he would disenchant the Sword, swing, and then he would Counterspell the Snapcaster Mage.
Sure.
And then Todd would lose there.
Right. That has to be basically a Counterspell right there.
Yeah.
And you know Shaheen has Lingering Souls in his list.
Yeah, I suppose it would have to be like Force of Will would work because he has 5 untapped mana, but it's even questionable how many Force of Wills are still in right now. This is a matchup where typically that card's not very good.
Yeah. I mean, some people keep in their copies, some people keep in a couple copies, but there's no guarantee it's there.
All right.
But you know for sure Lingering Souls in his list. So I think that's got to be the tiebreaker on whatever play you make there. So I think Todd there showing a lot of patience, playing around the card that he knows he can beat, that can beat him in that spot that Shaheen definitely has in his list.
All right, so with that, we are on to game 3 between the two players. This one, Shaheen will get to be on the play for. We have yet to see that turn 1 Deathrite Shaman from Todd's deck, which to me seems like one of the big appeals to playing Esper Deathblade as opposed to Stoneblade is that you do have access to these faster starts with a turn 1 mana accelerant. When Todd gets these late game Deathrites like he's been getting, it seems like they aren't particularly better than any of the cards that Shaheen is playing. Certainly not better than Lingering Souls.
Yeah, the Deathrite Shaman informs a lot of the ways that these two decks are built differently. For example, Todd has Wasteland in his list. Shaheen does not. That's because Shaheen's land drops are more valuable for himself than his opponents on average, because Shaheen's trying to get to things like Jace and Intuition for Lingering Souls and such. Todd also has Liliana the Veil, because that's one of the best plays the format has to offer off of a Deathrite Shaman. Shaheen does not have that card, again, so Liliana the Veil doesn't make as much sense in his list. Todd is playing a lot of copies of True Name Nemesis. That's another very powerful thing to do early on in the game off of a Deathrite Shaman. Shaheen without that card in his list, so he's instead playing more sweepers. So just that one card dictates so many of the other cards that these players choose to put in their decks.
Yeah, and just as we saw that game, Shaheen really dodged a bullet by being able to Thought Seize away that True Name Nemesis before Todd was able to get it into play. I believe like very late in the game, he had a Council's Judgment, which could have taken care of it, but especially with the pair of Wastelands that Todd had, if Todd, had a chance to get down that True Name Nemesis, it likely would have just killed Shaheen.
Yeah, Todd was just not able to capitalize on that early advantage for a while there. He was drawing some of the very few cards in his deck that didn't allow him to capitalize. It was additional discard spells. If he found land number 5, in fact, he could have easily just played the Batterskull, but instead the game went on for a very long time.
All right, well, we are starting out with an Inquisition of Kozilek coming from Shaheen. We're going to have a look at Todd's hand, and it does have that possibility to make that turn 1 Deathrite Shaman right now. 3 lands, one of them's a fetch land. Deathrite Shaman, Stoneforge, Abrupt Decay, Brainstorm, a pretty stocked hand on Todd's side. And we'll see, Shaheen might be priced into taking the Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, and as a nod to how good it is on turn 1, Shaheen's going to go ahead and leave the rest of the cards, taking Deathrite.
Yeah, it opens up too many explosive openings for Todd. Even if Shaheen doesn't have an immediate answer to the Stoneforge Mystic in Todd's hand, he still may be better served just getting rid of the Deathrite Shaman while he can.
And we may see a trade of Stoneforges here. Shaheen's going to cast his first on turn 2. He's going to go ahead and get the Batterskull. Todd's going to do an end-step Brainstorm here. Wanting additional cards, just being mana efficient. He has a lot of pretty good 2-drops in his hand, so getting this out of the way may be pretty good. Instead of making his own Stoneforge, Todd's going to go ahead and Abrupt Decay Shaheen's Stoneforge.
Doesn't want to get behind the 8-ball there. Doesn't want to be the one taking the first hit. It's also really risky if Shaheen draws like a discard spell. So.
Sure. Yeah, and then he just takes the equipment. So board's still clear. Back over on Shaheen's side, and we do see a pretty fun card in Shaheen's hand here. There's a Notion Thief hiding out among other suspects. Without Stoneforge, Shaheen's going to go ahead and put the Batterskull back away.
Not clear if he has a way to shuffle.
Yeah,
does not appear so.
Don't believe so. He's going to Thought Seize. Todd, with just that Stoneforge and Council's Judgment, Todd has Looked like he actually shuffled away his Abrupt Decay there. Draft Return is another fetch land. So now Todd with a hand of almost all lands. He's going to go ahead and waste Shaheen off the Tundra.
But Shaheen's in a great position here with Lingering Souls in hand. Todd with just lands in a Council's Judgment. So
talk me through that. Todd had some more action. Well, no, okay. Maybe he didn't have more action. Is it possible to just break off the Brainstorm?
Yeah, he hasn't really found anything to do.
Yeah, well, he did Brainstorm and shuffle away at one point. And usually after that, your hand is pretty stocked. So it looks like Todd brainstormed into lands and drew lands.
Yeah. And now he's in a lot of trouble here. No answer to these souls right now. No way to cut Shaheen off of black mana, as Shaheen has a basic swamp. And so these Lingering Souls are going to get to do a lot of work.
And they go to work on his life total. Todd now down to 17. Will Shaheen go for the second half of it? Well, not yet. First, he's going to go ahead and cast Snapcaster Mage with black up. He's going to go ahead and he's going to go right for Todd's hand.
I like this. If he has some sort of sweeper, it induces it right away. And if he doesn't, this advances his board in just the same fashion.
Yeah, doesn't want to be Jace, so he goes. He's Shaheen confident enough here that he takes 2 to Thoughtseize as opposed to casting Inquisition.
Yeah, Jace, Force of Will, Batter Skull, whatever. Shaheen's life total not really a factor here.
Yep. Todd down to 13. Shaheen's going to go ahead and cast the second half of Lingering Souls. That puts a 6th point of power on the board. Todd with the hand of just lands did sneak a Jitte into play. If he can find a card to put it onto, Jitte is one of the cards that actually can bring him back from this spot, but he's going to have to do it real fast.
Real fast. And this is one of the upshots of playing with Lingering Souls as well. You see Todd has drawn a copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor. Really hard to play this on a stable board against a deck that's packing cards like Lingering Souls.
Todd's going to fetch, go ahead and cast Jace. He's going to need to find a creature to put this Jitte onto. And even then, he's going to drop to 6, possibly lower. Maybe if he can, brainstorm into a Deathrite this turn and then cast it this turn.
Or if he finds a Zealous Persecution, then he has a reprieve.
Oh, wow, you're right.
Sweeps up Shaheen's board.
Zealous is great here. We do know that Todd is playing 2 copies of that in the board, and he did bring them in for game 2. So he's in a Brainstorm. He finds Spell Pierce. He does find the Deathrite, and I don't believe he's made a land drop this turn, so I think he can get a creature into play.
Yep, and he does have an opportunity to fetch again, so he gets rid of some of these excess lands, so he'll be drawing fresh now. His Jace is probably not surviving through this turn, but Todd at least has a little something going on now.
Yeah, he has a creature that could attack next turn with Jitte. Granted, it would probably be swinging to its death here, as Shaheen doesn't have to leave back too much to take care of it.
Now, what's really hilarious is, does Shaheen try to get greedy here with this Notion Thief in hand, just attack Todd with the Lingering Souls and say go? It appears that he's not going to go for that line.
All right, he's going to go ahead and Thoughtseize away Todd's Spell Pierce. And he's just going to go ahead and Council's Judgment away. I believe it's the Deathrite Shaman.
Well, the Jitte is a blank here.
If there's no creature.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this gets rid of this. In effect, it gets rid of both of them.
But I like this play. No reason to risk Todd drawing something like True Name Nemesis and stealing the game from you.
Yeah.
This path of play still makes it really tough on Todd. Shaheen can kill pretty quickly here, and there's no risk of equipment beating him from the spot.
Comes from a position of strength here. So Shaheen deals 3 to the Jace, 3 more to Todd. Now at 8 life, and just playing off the top of his deck, can Todd get back into this? He needs a Zealous Persecution, as you mentioned before. And here's a swing for 6. Todd's going to go ahead and block with Deathrite. Deathrite's going to go ahead and eat, I imagine, a creature to gain himself 2 life.
Yeah, still just trying to give himself a little bit of time to hopefully find his Zealous Persecution.
So Todd's going to drop to 6 there. Finds True Name Nemesis, so as you mentioned there, heads up on Shaheen to take the Jitte. His True Name is now in play. Just 2 mana up. Todd is at he's at 6, he's at a virtual 2. That's where Shaheen puts him. Todd's gonna have to draw Zealous this turn. And it does not work. There you go, Shaheen Soorani in 3 wins the Blade Mirror with his Esper Stoneblade deck.
And I think Lingering Souls definitely the determining factor. It was excellent in those games, and just gives it makes Todd have to take an aggressive role in the matchup, because if the game drags out for too long, Shaheen's additional copies of Jace and Lingering Souls gives him a huge edge. And the Esper Deathblade deck is not really that well suited to taking the aggressive role in the matchup.